This is Gerald of us. Flower names, are they always really also describing plants? Is it the intention? Is that the inspiration? Why certain names are given to plants? Of course, there are other reasons sometimes as well that certain plants are given a name because of some other associations, and actually these associations remain there also. And there are lesser reference to, let's say, the form of the plant. My theory says that every letter has a specific position, it has an orientation. We orientate ourselves upon these letters, and these letters have a tendency to show you a certain direction. You can make them more conscious because it's very unconscious most of the time that this happens. But thanks to a method that I developed further, we can make that also more conscious in all the different ways, in the content, in the position, in the how it works together, in also the geometrical aspect of it, how the things grow, what kind of formation process that is can be associated from these positions and so on. And that theory is, you can see, the resumed in a very simplified way on the right, and some preparations before that theory came to existence can be found in these books, volume 1 and 2 into one, and then volume 1 and 2 separately. The volume 2 is more the history of meaningfulness of letters. Okay, let's go to the next flower, which is Gardenia. And this is already, yeah, that border area of where we can say, okay, does this still have a meaning? Because Gardenia is, even if you hear the word, you have the word garden in it, which is immediately recognizable, and then the ia, which as a form alone can easily be imagined as being used for a flower, because it's a focus in which there is an application in it. So like a flower, you have a middle in it, so it can be used as flowers because you can have to pick them in different places. The E says there's an application which you can put on different places as soon as you know what kind of application you have. So ia as the ending can easily have the form of a flower in the end, or has that association in the end, because that are the spots of attention that is given in them. So garden plus ia easily gives you the impression, oh, it's about a garden flower. Now, where does that name come from? It's actually named after a botanist, naturalist, zoologist, Alexander Garden. His name was Garden, actually, quite funny enough. So let's investigate what Gardenia will give us at the end. And all the letters that we have, they always have a specific focus, and these are the three focuses. They are a bit like overlapping focuses, and these overlaps also give you an idea of where your attention is going to. You can have the local focuses or the direct focuses, which mostly are on Earth, and you see the physical objects there at a steady place. When you remove our eyes, it's in that green area. There are 9 different letters, all in ordered position, so every different order has a different letter. That's the kind of logic that builds up. Or we have more general rules which then will be applied, like with the E, will be applied to the right time and place and space. So in between these zones will be the letters. The most difficult letters are these generalized positions, because we're already losing a steady position when we go away from the local space. The local space, which has an order also in 3 dimensions in geometry and so on, horizontal, vertical, diagonal. It's very, you can count on it. It's just the basic features also geometrically which are there. when you need timing, okay, you have to calculate more like, okay, where's the beginning, where's the ending, what did change, and so on. It's already much more complicated. The end result of the most complicated situations are where you don't see immediately where the place is or where the timing is. So you have to have more like a formula that says, okay, this formula I can put into a place and timing at the same time. But as a form, it is very difficult to express it as a form, because it's an orientation which tries to find orientation, has lost already its steady orientation. So having a word that starts with one of these letters of the last category is not exactly the kind of words that will give you a form directly. The G, so it is mostly more about abstract ideas that make up the formula before you find the place, the form, the timing, and all these things. So the G will be at that place. So you have not just one focus, not just two focus, you have three focus in which you try to balance out, yeah, where is it actually that I'm going to have an orientation. Where do you have it in my scheme? It's try to look how to start from somewhere the limits. It's at the limits of our understanding, at the limits of what we visualize, at the limits of what we can still time, what we can still place, and so on. So it's at these edges. Now, how can we put this idea into a form is difficult. But I have some ideas how we could do that. It's at the borders, but it's at the borders where it will have a meeting point in the local space, because it's at the first level. So the only way how I can imagine how this would work is that bow also that actually says I have a much larger space beyond everything I see and can measure. That's all behind it. It's difficult to measure. Where's the beginning? Where's the ending? I don't see it very well, but I have my point in a local space where I have a meeting point. That's what it is. It's that meeting point here. That's the G point. Compared to S, for instance, S is at the edges, but really at the edges, as far away, it loses completely the connection to the local space, loses completely the connection to the timing. So it's really at the borders, and we have to try to measure it from a distance. G, we have it close by, but close by in a way that we only have that meeting point at the borders, so we can still start from the borders to see, okay, we can't measure it easily, like how big will this world be beyond it. Why? We don't see it, we don't measure it, we can't measure it, we can't measure the timing, we can't measure the context very well, but we can sense it. Okay, something has an influence on us. It are mostly about bigger things than our personal perspective. It comes down to that we can still sense what comes down to us, like via the diagonal reflection, actually. So the G, we only have, so it's at the first level, so we have one point we can try to measure as a feedback. So there is a feedback which we can measure. So where is that feedback? To the right, to the left, and the range of feedback is in that way slightly touchable, slightly receivable. That's more or less the sense. I hope I expressed it well, how the G is coming to our senses, how we sense that, how we measure it. To have a mathematical definition of it, I think, will be a bit more difficult, but this is a good starting point to notice, okay, this is the point we can measure this, and it comes from that point, and okay, probably there will be a possibility to make it into a more mathematical definition, but it will be difficult. But we know where the measure points are and how we have to measure it. So there's something more general, bigger, beyond it, and of course, depending on the diagonal place or direction, it is also able to gain an influence via space, actually via the effect, the end effect, which we will see in space. This is described also in my book with much more detail, how this influence comes to us via reflection, via feedback, how these reflections occur in space and so on. There's a lot of explanations there, but I'm not going into detail there. It's about that feedback process which can come to an effect in space. But that's mainly it. So this is the G. It will have that effect upon us from something bigger. The R, where you have it also at the ending, but it's at the ending also in the feedback process. It is that feedback process at the ending of where we see the material, where the material is going to. So actually when we put the R into that range of G, then the R will gain us also not just an influencer, but also will gain material for it at that point. It is a bit smaller. It's so the R is a diagonal, but it's that influence range. There are always three ranges of domains, let's say, of focus. It's the middle focus. You have then the middle focus, which is mostly the starting point. Then you have the focus a little bit further away. Mostly it's also about timing, but also here the material lies, and at the border it's of course where you see the limits and where you have to see, okay, how can we still measure it, because we are losing a part of our vision already at the borders. But if it's somewhere in the middle, okay, there's the material, and that's also where the R is. The R then at the edges of where the R is, so you're going to measure where your material connects. That's what the R will do. It will connect all the material further. It will be the connection points which are measured in R. When I have the Gardenia, I have G, A, and R, so the R has to be in the end. I have here the R as an influence. I will put it just there. I will put the other letters, I add the other letters to it as well. So then I have Gar and then Denia. So you see that Gar is separate. You can even hear that. And then Den or Garden, what you have now is the D, the E, and the N, which are all measure points of that are related with timing. And then the Ia in the end, which clearly also are added as well. So now how can we translate that into a meaningfulness? It's not that difficult, because when we understand the positions of the letters, we also understand what are the meaningfulness positions there. So when I translate Gardenia into these meaningful positions, I can read garden and Gardenia into these three separate words. Gar, so what is given a growing attention to it as a place, is the G or the GA, with a connection to it, R, which is directed, D, to the highlight, A, to take something useful out of it, or N. You can read these aspects in my scheme if you want to have to go back then. And the IA, which is added, is then about the receiving of applications at certain places. Maybe it's still abstract for you, so I will have to put them a bit closer together and express them a bit better so that you see what is really happening here. So that region here, you see that growing attention to that place, even better, making connections to it. Of course, this place will also be used in a certain time aspect. That's the din, the time aspect, because these are three words about timing. What you do with it. So first you have the preparation, the context, the gar, then you have the timing, din. So you direct yourself to highlights to take something useful out of it. More and more you come to the real meaning of garden. So if you put both images together, so you have the context on the place, the gar, and then the timing inside it, we can actually see much better that what we are doing here at that place. We're preparing something there which is bigger than what we understand, because and it will have an influence on it, and something will grow in it. That's already something that we can see. How do we translate it without the helping tools? So that you have this bigger picture, of course, the bigger aspects, the bigger whatever the influences are that of what's coming to us via the G into a continuance, something that we can take out and can grow out of it on our space by effort, actually, a little bit. And that is what the garden will do. That's what the garden will have as an influence. The IA will have that kind of form of an application into a form, so an application that we can use anywhere. We will of course add into that last point of garden, so the Gardenia will easily be associated as like, what can we grow out of our garden? So it is indeed that meaningfulness, and it's probably not much more that is left from it. What is named Gardenia is a certain flower, but that flower actually has a direct influence, and that influence as a direct reference to that garden, that gardenist. So and that also creates and recreates that idea. So we are able to get something out of our garden by effort. This is the result. It's not perfectly describing the plant. Maybe if I try to make it into a form, I don't think it is really necessary to do so. The idea is not really a reference to the form either, I think, but it's more a reference to, yes, you can really have that in your garden. You can have this effort, and you can have this sense of what it will do to you. It will do something which brings you to something bigger than life, actually, and this is the result, and that is satisfying, and that's a certain person did this, and this is a tribute to this person. All these things play along in the naming of this plant, and I think sometimes indeed there can be other stories beyond it than just the form. Obviously, of course, that it's not always about just a form or how do we have to behave towards it. Here as well, there is a behavior towards it. It's that behavior of gardening. Okay, thanks again for watching. Bye bye.